Very great pleasure. Good afternoon. It's my very great pleasure to introduce Chloe Learey, the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty. And it's not just early childhood, it's a Center for Child and Family Development. I'm going to skip the rest of my speech. There's so much more they do. And if you get a chance and Chloe doesn't have the time to tell you all about it, please check it out. So Chloe, take it away. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Tom. I'm really happy to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So yeah, thanks for giving me some time to update you actually on what's happening on the campus. Tom's right, the Winston Prouty Center does so much more than just childcare, not just childcare. So definitely take some time to figure that out. But one of the things we're doing is stewarding this very large campus. I'm going to share my screen if I can. And I am going to walk you through, hopefully I can play. So I can't remember when I was here last telling you all about what was happening on the campus, but I thought I would go through what we accomplished from our planning process in 2019, which I think I told you all about. I hope I did. I believe you had a meeting here actually in our great room, and then tell you what's happening now. So just to refresh your memories, in the fall of 2019, we put together a group of people to think about the campus. When we bought the campus, we knew that we would need help with it. So we brought together about 70 people to talk about sort of visioning what could happen in the community, what was the opportunity with the campus. Out of that, we had 25 people who participated on 4 different groups, focusing on sort of what's happening in our community and what does our community need, the infrastructure of the campus, so the physical plant, the real estate aspect of the campus, what are rental rates, what's selling, what are some opportunities there, and then the financial piece of what we were looking at. We were losing about $300,000 a year, which we anticipated when we bought the campus, but clearly that's not sustainable. So really what part of what drove this process was we got to stem the losses and stop them, but really also how do we maximize this place for the community? Again, we see ourselves as stewards of the land, not that we needed 180 acres and 130,000 square feet of space or to be landlords, but we recognize that this was a real asset and we want to make sure that it is for the community. The recommendations that came out of the planning process, and this first one was a big surprise, that we should keep owning it and at least and then revisit it next year. So surprisingly, selling, our original idea was to sell pieces of the property and just keep our building, sort of have a condo association. And the surprise was that didn't actually make a lot of sense financially. So we're going to keep owning the campus. The task force really recommended prioritizing, protecting our programs, keep our core mission front and center, but that we needed to look at strategies to improve our revenue and cash flow if we were going to try to support the campus and stem our losses. And this really needed for us to create the capacity to manage the property. So again, we're not landlords. We've never done anything like this. I know many of you probably thought we were a little, out of our depth. You probably still do, although we're having a lot of fun and doing good stuff. So, but we really needed somebody to manage the property. And so that was a recommendation. And then looking at community needs, there were sort of short-term and long-term recommendations around that. Short-term, some of you may remember the seasonal overflow shelter was here and a dorm on campus. They've moved. So really looking at, are there other program linked housing options that we might want to support? And also just continuing to be a place where the community can get together. We have lots of meetings on campus and before COVID, and it just seemed like that was a role we could play, at least in offering space and sort of being, making sure that the community had places to get together. But longer term, thinking about community needs, what came out of planning, and this won't surprise any of you, housing and more housing, which has also been really magnified by the pandemic. So what could this property offer on that front? Indoor recreation came up. So some of you maybe who were on the plan might remember people kept talking about Well, the Keene has a YMCA. Why don't we have a YMCA? People move to Keene. What are some opportunities we have here that we could look at that? So maybe a little pie in the sky, but could we have a bubble? I don't know. We'll see. And then just this piece of property sits in an interesting place for connecting the region. So we're on a sidewalk, we have infrastructure, water and sewer. What is the opportunity to connect neighborhoods? This really came from Chris Campany. We're connected to West Brattleboro, to Algiers Village and Guilford, and actually Canal Street. So how could we sort of connect to the neighborhood and the community? And doing all of that, continue thinking about the campus, recommendations around the physical plants, environmental sustainability. For any of you who have been on campus, when it has been peak time, parking is an issue. So, recommendations to keep looking at that. But where that activity really has been this interesting idea to have a design competition and master planning. So again, Chris Campany thought, what if we got some people to help us think about what you might do on the campus? What could that design could look like? How would you build housing? Where would you put it? And have it sort of engaging either a firm or maybe some academic programs to do that. So we, despite COVID, have accomplished many things this year. And I don't know how, except when I was thinking about talking to you all, and I realized it's because we have really amazing people. Tom and Carla were both on the task force that helped us think of some really good stuff. And so because I think we had really good brains in the room, we came up with things that we could actually do. We have a tenant in the kitchen, a bite to eat, early, right before the pandemic, I think, just dove in. They offer lunch 3 days a week. I actually heard they offered dinner the other week because there are soccer practices happening on campus. So they stayed open and offered dinner. That's pretty exciting. We did some energy efficiency work. We had a 3,000 gallon hot water heater in this building, Big Blue, that's been replaced. So we're not heating a bunch of water we don't need. The heating system in Croker, which is where the gym is, got replaced. So we're not heating oil all summer. We actually we designated a director of campus development. So Lisa Whitney is our director of the campus. She was doing campus, HR, IT, and finance, not very sustainable. So she's really focused on the campus work. And then we rejiggered other people's jobs so that we cover those other responsibilities. And because we did that, we actually added tenants during this past year. We didn't lose anybody. No, we lost one person actually, and they're back. So we kept everybody and we added people. I think that of the 130,000 square feet, 90 to 95% of it is rented. And we also successfully increased the rent, which was a recommendation from the planning process. So instead of losing $300,000 last year, I think we came in at a $72,000 loss, which was amazing. We are going to break even this year, projected to, and I actually think we'll do better. And that's because of COVID. We access a lot of the, Paycheck Protection Program and other resources and grants. So, but our budget, what we're projecting for next year is that we're actually in the black for Prouty programs and just slightly in the red for the campus, which is amazing to me. So we are ahead of schedule with our financial picture that's coming out of the planning. And the last thing I want to point out is during the campus planning process, we were introduced to Delta Vermont. So some of you may know that Bob Johnson, who owns Omega Optical, his Delta campus has an entity called Delta Vermont, and he's had a vision for 25 years of housing, a place to live, work, and play, developing housing. Commonwealth was part of that, although they are not any longer part of the campus. So out of this process, we developed a memorandum of understanding with Delta because we realized we had some aligned ideas around housing and how do we help our sustainability, helping this region thrive, really. So we said, let's work together. We'll start with some trail work. We'll talk about housing. We'll talk about some of these other things. So we have an MOU with Delta Vermont in place. So out of that, here's what's happening now. We followed up on the design challenge idea, getting maybe academic programs invested in coming up with a sort of design competition. So we created an advisory committee and an initiative that we're calling the Prouty Delta Development Initiative to really think about, again, it's much more interesting to think about 300 acres of Delta, Vermont, and Prouty combined than maybe just our own campuses. And so we started talking, like, we have no idea how to do a design competition, but we thought some people could help us. So we put together an advisory committee listed over here. Chris Campany is on it as one of the major, I think, visionaries, again, of the importance of this parcel of land. Sue Fillion, who is also on campus planning, Adam Hubbard, those of us from Delta and Prouty. Colin Meads actually worked at Wyndham Regional Commission. She's a landscape architect, I think, or a planner. Jen Stromston, Mark Westa, and Alex Wilson, who is also on campus planning. So this group of people is helping us think about the next steps we need to take, including inviting academic programs to participate in designing, sort of thinking about, dreaming about, I wouldn't say dreaming like totally pie in the sky, but grounded in the thinking we did during campus planning, and in our MOU and our shared values and what we're looking for. So this spring, and what I guess I'll just back up and say, when we talk about housing, we're not imagining like the high point, like a bunch of single family homes on 3 acres. That's not what our community needs necessarily right now. So really thinking about all kinds of different housing, inclusive of all kinds of different people on the age spectrum, on the socioeconomic spectrum, that one of the values is really inclusiveness, and how do we create something that reflects our community and meets the need for a lot of people in the community. So I just want to be really clear about that. So this spring, we had 2 programs two classes who said, we'll play around with this. We'll see what we can do. Keene State College and University of Southern Maine. We haven't seen any presentation from Keene State, but I did want to share with you. We had 4 graduate students from the University of Southern Maine who sort of went through all our materials, our maps, our MOU, our campus planning document, and came up with some ideas about what we might do. They were specifically working in a program called SketchUp. That was the point of their class, but so this is their attempt to practice that. But I just want to point out, somebody put an indoor recreational facility to, sort of proposed it over here. And that here's Holton Hall, for those of you who are familiar with campus, and then our building over here. So thinking about, well, infill on the campus land, maybe you could do an indoor recreational facility. In terms of housing, this person, I think, was looking at the lot that's over off of Maple Street. So, maybe some high density housing and some single family homes. This is an image of somebody who's thinking about Delta, and, Delta actually has Act 250 permits and some plans for housing. So some ideas about that. And then we also, just to be clear, conserving the land as much as possible, recognizing that there's a real value in that. And both of our campuses have sort of conservation space or proposed conservation space. So I thought this was a fun design, and it is a very hilly piece of property. So are there ways we can actually build houses that would work with the land? So these are concepts, but I just wanted to give you a sense of when you start thinking about it, and when people from away start thinking about it, there's some exciting things that can happen. So this is transitioning into, so that happened this spring, and that really gave us some information for this fall. We put together a more robust document around the design challenge. This design challenge is going to have an award for the best design and award for participating. So putting together a package of, if your design wins, you'll get some money. And it's, it's being, so it's a little more formal, I guess is what I would say, than the classes that we did this spring. We hope to send it out, but some of the people on the advisory committee have connections to academic institutions. We're sending it out to places, seeing if people are interested. And yeah, really excited about what might come back. Colin Meads, who is on the advisory committee, actually helped organize a design competition around Nantucket, but that's very fascinating. So we have some expertise, and some of you, yeah, anyway, that's an interesting, it's just an interesting approach, I think, to helping conceptualize what people might do. So that we're getting started on that. It's very, it's energizing and exciting, and it feels good to bring to fruition some of the things that came out of campus planning, even though it sounded, again, sort of like a dream. I think it's a dream we can actually make a reality. So And this is started to really think about how it will be creating a neighborhood in a community. So this yellow outline, these are our 2 parcels of land. So, this is where you come into Prouty. This is where Holton Hall would be. And then this is Delta, Vermont off of Route 5, where you would drive into Commonwealth and Omega Optical. So you put this all together. This is where we sit in the region, close to 95, near West Brattleboro and connecting West Brattleboro. Algiers Village is over here, and then Canal Street in downtown. So if you think about it, if you lived on this, if there were a house here somewhere on our property, you could theoretically even walk to the hospital or walk to the pharmacy or walk to the grocery store. You could certainly ride a bike. You could certainly ride an electric scooter. So you start thinking about that. And, maybe you work at the hospital and we have this little, there's a stagecoach, an old stagecoach road that goes right through both of our properties. I can walk over to Delta, Vermont and Route 5 in about 25 minutes. So let's imagine electric scooters going. I work at the hospital, I jump on my scooter, I go to the Guilford Country Store for lunch. I don't know, it's possible. So that's really sort of thinking big and really exciting to think about. And certainly, again, as we come out of the pandemic, we certainly know that housing is a primary, and sort of that economic development in our region will need housing, places for those folks to live, and then childcare for their kids to go to, so they can go to work. But that's another story. So next steps, we are sending the design challenge document to programs. I would just ask if any of you know of a landscape architect or a town planner or somebody in a program who might be able to help us get the document out there. Let me know, because we'd love to get it out broadly. We submitted for congressionally designated spending for master planning. So Leahy and Sanders both got an application from us. So we're waiting to hear about that. Just about $150,000, not a big chunk of money, but it would really maybe help us make the leap to hiring a firm that could use some of the ideas that came out of the design challenge and help us make that, sort of concept, not just have it be a concept, but what would we really need to do to make it happen. We need some help with this. So we're going to be looking to hire a graduate student again in land planning or landscape architecture to help support either or both projects. And, again, Chris Campany, want to give him lots of kudos. He did that for the Hensdale Brattleboro Bridge project, got a lot of help. So hope we'll be able to find somebody. And we'll keep considering incremental development opportunities. So nothing's stopped. We're going to keep talking about what opportunities exist now. We just want to keep the big vision in mind and not do anything that would sort of close a major door on some of our other ideas. So for instance, Brattleboro Youth Soccer Association or Storm Soccer plays soccer here primarily. They've talked, we've been talking with them on and off for years about how do we make sure the field is better. So we're going to keep talking about that and help sort of find money to make sure that lower soccer field is up to par. And, it's not development in the sense of housing, but it's developing the recreational part of the campus. So we will keep doing things like that, and Delta will too. And then finally, we're going to have to keep exploring how we're going to make this work financially. This is not a project that would fit neatly into somebody's portfolio like Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust. They might have a piece of it, but it's a very different kind of model of thinking of development, economic development, like with partners who maybe wouldn't normally come to the table. So we and there are certainly other places that have done this, other campuses that have had to go through this. So we will be looking for creative ideas around how to make this work. So I will leave you with the vision, because I was sort of all over the place, but this is a summary of, I think of our shared, again, values and vision with Delta, that we want to create a sustainable place for people to live, work, and play that includes a diversity of people, contributes to the overall vibrancy of the region by complementing what exists in the community. It's really important that whatever we do here works for everybody, works for the region, works for our community, and is part of what's happening around us. It's not an isolated thing. So again, really, it's exciting, it's daunting, and it's because of people like our advisory committee and the people who participated in campus planning that we are even to keep moving this forward and think about it. So We really appreciate all the support and people's interest, and wide open to thoughts and ideas as we move forward. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and see if anybody has any questions, ideas.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Maybe you could throw your email address in the chat so people could contact you, since we're kind of running out of time here.
I will do that. I think I spelled it right. I would also put a plug in for our Par for the Cause fundraiser and mini disc golf. It's not as fun as disc golf, but it is pretty fun. So check it out at winstonprouty.org. We have lots of fun things, and we are actually going to have an in-person event with music and food. So check that out too. It'll be fun.
What kind of uses are on your excess land now? I remember years ago there was a I've forgotten even what they call them, but a rope course type of thing was up there.
Yeah, so High Five Adventure Learning is one of the tenants. They've actually been here since 1992, and they've built a high ropes course sort of up at the top of, I call it the Sound of Music Hill. So if you go to the top of the hill and into the woods a little ways, they are still using it. But I think a lot of their work is pivoted to building ropes courses in other places, but they're certainly a primary tenant and user of the land. And there are 5 seasonal cabins that the Lions Club built several years ago that we rent that people can use with there's a bathhouse, there's showers and bathrooms and a pavilion and electricity. There are certainly trails. Hopefully everybody's been on the trails, and that's open to the public. Please put your dog on a leash. Please, please, please. We had a bad dog biting incident, which was unfortunate, but we love seeing people up here walking on the trails. And then there's actually Hilltop Montessori has a sort of a camping area. They have their 7th and 8th graders do an outdoor program up at it's called Upland. So that's out on that property. So those are some of the things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was just there over the weekend, those trails are fantastic. I've done them in the winter. And just looking at, not that I would ever get on a ropes course, let's not kid, but just looking, it's sort of a magical place up there. And when Hilltop was on the campus, there's a sort of a water reservoir that they used to do ecology classes on. But I usually do a looping trail. This time I went straight out, and I'm like, oh, I'm ending up at some other piece of property. And I happen to know the sculpture that's on the Delta campus. I'm like, look at that. I've like walked the entire length of down, Brattleboro South, as it were.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like anything. It was so beautiful out there in the woods, and I ended up in the middle of the Delta campus. And I was like, who knew these properties connected?
Yeah, they connect. And Mara, I don't know if you noticed, so again, that was an old stagecoach road, and one of the things that we've imagined is as a primary or artery, whether it's for cars or not, I don't know. That sort of like gives me pause, but can you imagine like segways or electric bikes or what,
Hey, listen, my life in the future on my piece of property involves finding an electric, bright red with headlights golf cart to start puttering around. So I think you should have electric golf carts with headlights so we can get down to breakfast or lunch or dinner and home again very easily on those trails.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Does anyone know if William Jewell is still working? He's a terrific landscape architect, and he participated in several charrettes we did downtown. He's down like on Butternut in Guilford. He's just a lovely, lovely man if he's still working. William Jewell or Bill Jewell, Jewell.
Great, thanks. That's great to know.
Well, thank you very much, Chloe. That was a great update and presentation, and maybe next time we can be on campus and see how things are progressing.
That would be great. A bite to eat could cater your lunch.
We could do a brown bagger too. Yes, thank you. All right. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and pay attention to surveys on trees and surveys on who's attending the changeover. Again, thank you, Chloe and Tom, for bringing her. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.